And they'll be like, तू बटन बनाती है? I'm like, नहीं वो तो engineer बनाता है, मैं खाली बताती हूँ कहाँ क्या है. So like I had school teachers call up my mother and like, she was good at studies. What are you doing?
Hello and welcome to the Desi Design Show, a podcast by Command Plus J, where we bring the fun back into design interviews and the Desi back into design. I am your host Anshuman Thar, and every week I sit down with Indian designers to get real about their work, their life, and everything in between. Today on the show, we have with us Swarna Srimal Mehta, an extremely talented UX designer and a genuinely amazing human being. Swarna, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks Anshuman for having me.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so for the people tuning in, some context about Swarna. She's currently working on the Jira platform at Atlassian and has worked on some really cool projects in the domains of conversational user interfaces at Samsung in the recent past. Before that, she graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with a master's in integrated innovation in products and services. Swarna, after having the good fortune of working with you briefly at Samsung and seeing the passion that you have for what you do, I just know today is going to be so much fun, and I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks. I'm excited too. Let's see how this goes. I'm curious.
Yes,
I've never been on a podcast, so this is my first time.
right. By the way, like in while I was doing the research for this, I found out like you went to Birla High when you were in Kolkata.
All through nursery to class 12. You were in Birla High?
Yes, exactly. Like
Oh,
we, our schools were opposite each other
yeah.
on one Moira Street.
Yes. Yes. We were 7 and 8 Moira Street. Yes.
Oh
Yeah.
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 But the
Opposite
I
sides of the
mean we
road.
both had to yeah, we both had to go through the flooding when it rained though. Like we always had
Yes.
to wait through that.
Yes.
So that
And
was
Vidya
same for
Mandir
everyone.
and whatnot. Yes. Those are all. Yeah.
Baapre. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Didn't know.
you're tuning in from Bangalore right now, right?
Yes. I'm in Bangalore right now.
What is the weather like there?
Amazing as ever. If I opened the windows, there would be too much wind, so I have everything shut while I record. But it's amazing.
Bangalore being Bangalore. Yeah. Nice. So, I mean, working at Atlassian, you've worked on a bunch of like enterprise stuff, right? And I wanted to know what does like a day in a life of an enterprise designer look like?
So, it's an interesting question because this was essentially why I joined Atlassian. I had never done B2B before this. I was always in B2C before this, and I wanted to see what it was to be an enterprise designer. So, I think a lot of the process of design itself remains common, but your stakeholders and the number of like dependencies that you are working with is very high. So just for example, if you think of a enterprise solution, you are looking at solutions that are helping people get work done. Okay, so versus say for example a B2C solution, which in which just from my experience they were not things that would help you get your work done. So for example, if you were designing a camera, or if you were designing your like a notes app, or if you were designing in my case like a voice interface, you were expecting the user to use that maybe for like maximum, even if you are designing a Facebook, an hour 2 hours in a day, right? But when you're in Jira, 8 hours in your office, you are literally there in that software logging work. Yeah. So any inefficiency in the UX, anything that makes it more painful is just multiplied many times. Okay, because you're like that. So that kind of is a different consideration. Like it falls into our design considerations. Like okay, even if this solution is not best from a UX point of view, but if it is more um, efficient to get things done, if it will get things done quicker, there is some amount of you will lean towards that solution only because these are people who have to do this task n number of times a day, for example. And it's not like, oh, I don't like this app, so I will install another app. You're in Jira because your like the company you're in uses Jira, so you don't even have alternatives. So it's a very different mindset that you have to have for the kind of feedback that you're getting. So all your feedback loops, you have to take it with a like grain of salt, because like you there are, people don't have alternatives. They're not using it because like they love it. It'll be awesome if they love it, and we want them to love it, but it's not like they have a choice. So these are some of the things, and I work on the Jira platform. So that means a multiple products are coming out of this platform. So I have to think of also like a lot of things in a way that it works for multiple products context rather than just like one solution in this environment. So yeah, I think just like circling back, it's just a number of things that are dependent on that one thing that you are designing. So the constraints as well as release cycles are very different.
Ah, okay. That's I never thought of this also affecting the release cycles the way it did. Because obviously you do want to test whatever you're working on and make sure it's the best it can be. I mean, because as designers, we never really know for sure until we put it out there. But like as much as we can, try to figure out we're doing everything as right and then put it out. But then but when the stakes are as high as some as building on Jira, then you really can't mess up even like a small thing.
So 90 days to 150 days, anywhere between that, is what it takes for a thing to be accessible by all users in Jira after we've built it out and tested it internally. So that's kind of the lag
Okay.
time that's.
And what did your day in the office look like generally?
So we typically started very early because of two reasons. One, we are in RMZ eco space. We want to just like avoid the traffic. Like, please come in at 8 and leave at 4. So that's the kind of thing. But also more overlap hours with Sydney because Sydney is quarters, and the earlier we start, the more overlap hours we have. So at least for me, I have a lot of like currently in my team, everybody's in Sydney apart from me. So like I literally don't have any person who is in India right now. So the more overlap hours I have with them, it would be better. So I generally start early. My first half of the day is heavy with meetings because those are the overlap hours. The meetings could be about decision making. The meetings could be about aligning stakeholders, some presentations. I think something that's changed in my process before Atlassian and now is how much time I spend designing. Almost same or little like comparable is what I spend in communicating the design because there are so many again stakeholders associated with that. So that was not something you did do that. You did present to stakeholders, but I think if I spend 8 hours designing something, I'm almost spending 6 to 8 hours communicating about that design. So that's something that happens in the first half of the day. Again, because I'm the platform team, a lot of products need to know in advance what we are designing. So therefore, a lot of stakeholders and a lot of communication as a result of that. And once you do, that's the first half of my day. And then for me, since the rest of the team is in Sydney, I will like cook lunch and then I will like just like I have my focus time, so I will do all my next day's work. Anything I'm like quiet time to like focus and really experiment with stuff. Sometimes if I'm in the mood, I will do like things which are like futuristic. Some will be more feature oriented, but yeah, that's my time between 2 and 5, 5:30, 5:36 is when I will like focus in. That's my day.
Nice, fun. And in the past, you've worked with like I'm just gonna segue a little bit away from like the screen-based UI and UX stuff that we've done, but like because you have extensively worked with like wearables and tangible media in general with Ducere or even at CMU, I wanted to know like you know how in the whole process of making something which is physical tangible there's so many smaller parts. First is the vision where you're like, oh, we're going to make this, it's going to be super cool, we're going to touch it, this is going to happen, that is going to happen. Then you actually get down to like the interfacing and the tinkering with the electronics and making sure that the Arduino is running correctly. And then there's the prototype making slash testing. So in this whole process, do you have a favorite and why? Is which one would that be?
So yes, I'm one of those product designers turned into UX designers. I'm not very proud of it,
Yeah.
I will have to say. But yeah,
Yeah.
I miss the workshop. I miss the
Mm-hmm.
trying to build things by hand,
Mm-hmm.
materials. Just the tactile thing of it is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I miss that, and I think that is the part of. So I'm in my undergrads. I have a product design degree. For a couple of years after my NID education, I also worked in wearables, as you said. So I was very much working on like physical forms and like tactile interactions and like a bunch of that. But I think what at least happened for me in my journey is I was working at a startup called Ducere, and you were only one of the first two, three designers that startup had, right? So this physical tactile device, they were making smart footwear, so you could track fitness with it. You could also track. You could also. It has great applications in navigation for visually impaired as well as this us.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch there
Mm-hmm.
that we had defined, and there was nobody to design that app to go along with this product because you needed to connect
Mm-hmm.
it to the phone. So we were just a
Yeah.
bunch of product designers suddenly like acha app banao. So that was like my first uh, anything to do with digital processes, and as a almost a consolation prize for not doing enough physical design, I my house is rigged with a lot of like electronics. I have a lot of Arduino stuff all around. So like my plants have sensors to tell me when to water them and which one to water when. So like
Nice.
yeah, so I build stuff, I tinker, I have a small lathe in my house where I do some wood stuff. So like yeah, I enjoy the aspect of tactility, but now I've that's become a weekend project type of thing for me rather than like a full time
Ah, okay. It's very interesting because I think that's this the whole angle of like getting into product design and then having some tech aspect introduced into it and then going like okay abhi iska app bhi bana do is like the story of a lot of product designers turned UX designers who I know. So yeah, so but coming back to the fact that that was one of your first projects, we also as creatives also have this thing where we we look back at what we've done in the past and we always like nitpick and we like find out some faults with it or we're just like oh how did I even think of working on this. So we have a segment in our show which we call classroom review where we ask our guests to just walk us through their first ever project and just tell us their thoughts about it in general. So yeah, the floor is yours, take it away.
wow. So this was 2012, I think. Yeah,
Oh
so
my
this is
god, okay.
like a good 10 years ago, still in NID. This was
Mm-hmm.
our first project in uh, human machine interaction or something. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what it was called.
Okay.
Ergonomics and things. So it was more to do with cognitive load and like
Mm-hmm.
how can you design something better. So it was somewhere in between. At least my project turned out to be somewhere in between, like a systems design project, a UX part to fit, as well as
Mm-hmm.
like the physical design of the thing. So um, yeah, there's so much that it fixed with it. But okay, I'll give you context. So essentially,
Yeah.
government hospitals. It's also interesting to look at it from post COVID. So there's a
Hmm.
bunch. Like I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
at that picture, and I'm like, how are people standing like that?
Standing so close,
But
yeah.
yeah, so if you see this like this plastic thing that is jutting out from the left side of the picture, that's essentially was supposed to be like a kiosk, a self-help kiosk for people to like it was a hospital management information system or something of that sort, HMIS.
Got it.
And essentially what it does is it'll allow you to just walk in and book your like this is where I need to go and this is the doctor I need to meet, and it'll tell you where to go, okay, in the hospital, because these government hospitals are large and many floors and like
Correct.
long corridors, you don't know where what is, and they expected that this will help this helper, which is right behind this kiosk, to be less overloaded. Clearly, nobody was using it, right? Now, there's a bunch of things that cause this, and some of them are like really, really obvious. So, like not understanding digital, not being comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not in your happiest state when you're walking into a hospital, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
would like
Mm-hmm.
that human interaction. If there's somebody waiting and asking for help, so yeah. So the idea essentially was that like how can we help this helper who is at the desk get his job done faster, but also like make use of this human machine interface that they had come up with. So essentially what we designed was a two-way screen, and it would help the uh, like this person assistant to quickly enter the data directly into the system, as well as the person who is at the hospital feel like hey, like there's somebody human who's helping me. So that's kind of what it was.
Okay.
As part of the solution, yeah, we, as I said, at that point you thought this was like wireframes were the end product. So yeah, that's something that you would But this was literally the first time you were doing icons ever. You were doing colors for the first time. Like I'm guilty of being that product designer who's like, huh, gray and green, good. Like I don't want colors. So this is the first time we were like thinking about different things, and there were a lot of other things, like people come to government hospitals for like disability certificates, death certificates, a lot of these, like um, more things that are less to do with doctors but are more admin like, which this helper was helping with. So there was a lot of things around that. So
Mhm.
this would still be an interesting solution. And now if I had to think of it from a post COVID world thing, I would be like, yeah, like let's not do a kiosk, let's make it app based, let's have many helpers just around the place so that there's no crowding. People are much more familiar with online payments, UPI payments. So there's a bunch of things around that that we could do. So there's a bunch we could fix around that. But yeah, that was the project. And yeah, thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is super
Yeah.
interesting to see. And also, I mean, I love that whenever we look at stuff in hindsight, we can make like anecdotes, because in a way, you back in 2012 were also helping people do their job more efficiently. And that's what you're doing now as well with working on Jira.
Wow. I did not think of that. That's
Yeah.
a stretch, but sure. Yes.
But thank you so much for walking us through that. It was very interesting to see. So I wanted to dial back a little bit and like ask a little bit about you. And I wanted to start off with a quintessential thing, which all, at least I feel like all UX designers everywhere or in designers in general have this. But like, what does your family think you do for a living?
Yeah, like I think it's the standard story of every designer out there. Like everybody was like I had school teachers call up my mother and like, she was good at studies, what are you doing? Like, because they thought I was doing fashion design. And like I clearly have no fashion sense even today. Okay, so I'm like, no, like that's not what I do. So it was hard to explain to my chemistry teacher, why are you not doing like you wanted to do like BSc in chemistry. Why are you doing design? What is design? So they were very distraught. But at that point, I think my father at least understood physical product design. So like he himself is very like, I come from a family where like a electrician or a carpenter never entered. We always fixed our own things. Okay, so I think just from a family point of view, yeah, like we were very self-help type. So I've always been comfortable around electronics, around like fixing furniture, getting the joints right, things like that. So they understood that part of like the workshop part of product design. So they were like, okay, fine. So you will build stuff. That's what she's going to do. So I think that's what they understood. And I think as I went through the 4 years of design, I think my family went through the 4 years of design as well. So they got a hang of what I do and like how I did it. UX is a much more recent thing, and it was a, oh, but now you will not build things. And I'm like, no, I will build things, but I will build things in the digital world. And
Hmm.
like a lot of things, how I would explain to them about, at least like back then, would be like, okay, when you open a the same app, like a WhatsApp on Apple and a WhatsApp on Android, why does it feel different? Those are the things that I define. So this is how I would try to like explain to them. But also I think in general over the last 5 years at least, there's been a huge, like people understand that design ke liye demand hai, this is what they do. They are more exposed to like say apps like Cred or apps like Paytm, that are visually very different. And they understand that those are decisions that somebody takes, and oh, Swarna does something of this nature is what they understand. Do they understand Jira?
Yeah.
No. Do they understand enterprise? No. But I think they get what I do. So yeah,
Yeah, some are similar. I think everyone has that story of they'll take this one app which their parents use and they're like,
yeah,
ये
yeah,
button इधर क्यों है? That is what I figure out.
uh, yeah. And they'll be like, तू
Yeah.
बटन बनाती है? I'm like, नहीं वो तो engineer बनाता है, मैं खाली बताती हूँ कहाँ क्या है. So yeah,
And I think you also touched upon this earlier on, where you were talking about the fact that you are a product designer turned UX designer. And in general, there's a lot of people who transition into UX design from another field. And I just wanted to like know, was that switch for you a conscious one, or was it something which just ended up happening unintentionally?
So, for me, I think it was a little bit unintentional. It was not something that I had planned on doing, but it's also a result of circumstances. And when I say circumstances, I also mean the Indian hiring scene for designers in general. Honestly, if I wanted to be a physical product designer and not go into, say, a very standard, like, like HCL, Wipro, all of these like things that are just designing, like, consumer electronics, washing machines, fridges. Nothing against them, but it's not something that is like fundamentally new. It is something that I would find like harder and harder to get. And more than that, I would find harder and harder to grow it. Okay. I think for me, it was a step change. First, I was defining physical product experiences. Then I did my master's, and then in that master's, I was doing a lot of IoT related stuff. So I got really interested in voice. So I came back to India and I started working in voice, which was less of visual screens. Honestly, I was not defining as much of the screens, but it was still a UX design because it was not physical products either. And now I'm doing fully digital experiences now. So I may go back. Like right now, I don't think I see myself as a person who's transitioned already. So I think I might still go back to do something in between or even full on physical product design. But I'm also doing other things in my career. So yeah, there are things. So yeah, who knows? Interesting options ahead.
Interesting options ahead. Like, so what are one of those things which you are like thinking of right now, or like what's going on? What's next in that whole journey for you?
So there are a few things I'm trying, not
Mm-hmm.
very successfully yet, but I'm trying. So when this is deep rooted, so I'll spend a minute trying to explain how this came about. So when I graduated from NID and I joined this startup Bukere, which is working on physical products, I was intrigued by how to get a product into the market, and there are various things that contribute to it beyond design. It could be mechanical engineering, it could be actually manufacturing. But one of the things that got me really interested was the business decisions that were taken as part of this products, and that really influence what a user is going to like experience from the product. So I was really interested in that, and since it was a small place, there was no defined role, so I learned a lot on the ground about other things as well. And I quickly realized that I want to do a master's which would help me grow beyond design about how products come into the market. So I went to CMU, did my master's in this really long named thing, which is essentially business and design put together. So let me like make it more subtle. So there were a bunch of courses around business strategy, product strategy, planning of a product, project management. There's a bunch of other things that were taught along with design that would help bring a solution to the market. And that was really interesting for me as a melting pot for things that were happening and how decisions were taken. Just looking at products and why they came to the market the way they did beyond just design was really interesting for me. So when I came back to India, I actually wanted a product role coming back. It was just hard to convince anybody that I would be able to do that without any prior experience.
Yeah.
So what I did was instead I got hired at Samsung for voice. So that was a domain that was I was really interested in. It was a space similar enough to the thing that I was doing at CMU with IoT and things like that. But I also didn't have a product manager in the group. So what was attractive to me is I could start doing both without actually having the title. So I started doing that. It was very interesting. From there, I moved into Atlassian, where they have their clear paths of they call it secondments. Essentially, people moving in between disciplines. So we have enough designers who used to be engineers or used to be even like people who were in the support side of things.
Mm-hmm.
There are enough product managers who've turned into engineers. There's a bunch of people like just doing cross things. So I'm trying right now trying really hard, not succeeding, as I said. Right now there's a bunch of factors in that, but I'm trying to get a product role within Atlassian. Through the secondment, what I can do is do a 6 month, like a trial, like almost like nothing changes for me. My managers don't change, my position doesn't change on paper. I just go and try it for 6 months and see if I like it. And if I like it and I actually do well and the team thinks that I can like take it forward, I can actually transition to a full-time product role. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of overlap between what a product manager does today and what a product designer does today, especially in the first parts of defining the problem area, defining what is the customer uh, going to like value. But the definition of value is slightly different. So the value becomes closer to what will people pay for, or what will help me acquire new users, what would help me, like what is my business metric that I'm targeting, and how does this align with that. So there's a bunch of, so it's similar and different from design, and I'm interested in trying to see if I can like bring back some of that master's knowledge and actually see it in
Mm-hmm.
actions. That's kind of what I'm doing right now.
That's so cool. I've always felt the same, like, with, but like with the fact that there's so much of overlap, especially because there is so much of, also that is exactly why there's so much collaboration, which ends up where you're working closely with product managers to do this. But the incentive, not incentive, I think the value which you're trying to create is, the metrics are different, because as the product designer, you're really caring a lot about, sure, strategy of the product and all of those things, but primarily about the user, where as the product manager you'd also be caring about the business, because your business is what you're
Correct.
thinking of a lot.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
that's so cool.
that there's also
Yeah.
some really hard prioritization calls that you need to make, which I may hate
Hmm.
myself for making. So like there are a lot of
Yeah,
pros and
yeah.
cons, but it's a experiment I am
Hmm.
interested in doing in my career. I still love design. It's not like I hate design and therefore I want to transition out of
Right,
it.
right.
So
Of course.
I may actually go into product management, hate it, and come back to design. But
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because I'm in a place that lets me experiment, I'm keen on doing that. That's
Hmm.
kind of where I am right now in
Yeah,
my journey.
that's amazing. And I think experimentation is like, you're never not going to, like, you're never going to reach to a point where we're just like, okay, this is it. This is all I want to be doing. We're always going to be like looking for the next thing which intrigues us. So that's super cool. And yeah, so I think we are nearing the end of the show. But before we do, we have a recurring segment which we lovingly call, drum roll please, 2 minute mein hot takes. So 2 minute mein hot takes is a rapid fire round which almost always goes over 2 minutes a little bit. And the main idea is I'm going to shoot a bunch of questions at you and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, are you ready?
Okay, shoot.
Okay, let's do this. Okay, so first, user personas, yay or nay?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, unpaid internship or side project?
Side project. Never an unpaid anything.
Okay. Big picture thinking or visual skills?
Big picture thinking.
All right. What would you change about Figma if you could?
I would merge Figma file and FigJam because I want timers inside my Figma file.
Yeah. Fair enough. Speaking of Figma files, also frames or groups?
Frames.
Frames. Okay. Um, it's coming, like, going back to your NID days. It's the middle of the night. Are you going to be ordering Kalpesh's bun maska or are you going to go to night mess?
Bun maska.
And if you had to choose between metal workshop or wood workshop?
Wood. Just because I like that material more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. What is one thing, one food which you absolutely have to have at like during Durga Puja at the pandal?
It'll have to be the khichdi, like the bhoger khichdi.
Bhoger khichdi. Beautiful. Nice. Okay. And is there something which you miss about Kolkata which you wish you had in Bangalore?
Oh, more history, man. There is nothing. Like people come here for like 5 days, and I'm like, if you don't want beer and you don't want to go like shopping, I don't know where to take you. Like Coorg chale. So I'm like, that's kind of what. Like it's amazing weather, but
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
miss being able to take people for like street food and more like the historical stuff. I'm just a person who likes that in a city, and yeah, Bangalore doesn't have that, but it has so much more, so that's good.
Right. Okay. Last question. Top three board games.
I'll go with the classics. Catan
Okay.
first. Splendor
Okay.
is my current favorite. Like I absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
third spot is slightly difficult, but I'd say just because I'm very inclined to like word games, I'll put Scrabble in there just because I like it a lot. But there's a bunch more.
Okay.
Like there's Azul, which is really good. Yeah, it's a hard question.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's a wrap on the rapid fire round. The last question before we wrap up the show. Swarna, if you could tell anyone who's watching this just one thing, what would it be?
I think we're still in that phase in India where we have the onus to design well and educate people about what design can do in like organizations, in our community, in to parents, everybody else. So I think yeah, we should not miss opportunities, and we should also call out bad design for bad design.
Nice. Okay. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Swarna, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you?
So I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm also on Instagram, but Instagram is like a personal account. So yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a website. So if you want to chat with me about something regarding work, drop me a
Mm-hmm.
message through that and I'll get in touch with you.
And you can find us at command plus J, spelled CMD plus J, on Instagram and Twitter. Swarna, it has been a true pleasure just watching you just passionately explain everything you're so into, whether it comes to like product decisions and business, or even just talking about street food on Kolkata. And yeah, it has been amazing having you on.
Gotta be a Calcutta girl.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Desi Design Show. Okay, then, bye.